Chapter 24, The Electrical Station. Why you should never mess with generators in the backrooms. My vision cleared as I found myself standing in the middle of an empty room lined with electrical generators and wiring. What the? I muttered as I turned a full 360 degrees around, taking in my surroundings. The room I was in was dimly lit, a small amount of light coming from a single light fixture that hung on a wiry black chain. The air was cold and heavy, and the smell of sulfur and old metal surrounded me. My eyes struggled to see in the dark as the sounds of steam being released from machinery in the distance pierced the air. Chills went through my entire body as I gripped my combat knife tightly, holding on to my only source of comfort at the time as the sounds of settling machinery and creaking pipes surrounded me from all sides. The air grew warmer as a cloud of steam burst from a nearby pipe, startling me as I dropped my weapon to the ground. The knife clattered as it hit the cold concrete, skidding a few feet away as I stumbled to the side. The loud sounds of machinery and metal on rock pierced the air as I struggled to keep my focus. I quickly made my way over to the knife and picked it up, scanning its surface for dents or cracks as I listened to the sounds that echoed off the walls from everywhere nearby. I already don't like this place, I muttered as I slid my knife into my pocket, keeping it at the ready but out of harm's way as I glanced at my flashlight in my other hand. I flicked it on, the beam of light flickering frantically before vanishing. Great, my fucking light doesn't work either, I said angrily as I hit the side of my flashlight with frustration. The light flickered multiple times, struggling to power on before it died completely. I growled in frustration as I fumbled in my pockets for a battery. I yanked a worn-out set of dark blue batteries out of my pocket and crouched down, centering my flashlight on the concrete as I strained to see the label on the battery pack. The label was too faded to read, and the realization of this made me exhale in frustration. This place is so fucking annoying, I muttered as I placed the batteries on the ground next to me, watching as they rolled slightly before coming to a stop. I popped the battery cover off the flashlight, setting the black plastic panel on the floor as I popped the batteries into their slots, one by one. I pressed the second battery into place before sliding the panel back on, waiting till I heard it click shut before staring into the distance. The walls were lined with pipes and wires, and some areas of the room were completely filled with unidentifiable machinery. Please work, I mumbled as I flicked the power switch in the on position. The flashlight flickered multiple times before sending a bright beam of light straight in front of me, revealing a large set of metal bars that blocked my intended way out of the room I was in. Okay then, I said as I stared at the large metal gate that blocked my only visible way out. Glanced around, shining the flashlight over the walls of pipes and air ducts before spotting a lever. There? I said confusedly as I walked over to the control panel. Dust billowed outwards from my feet as my shoes slapped the cold concrete ground. Please tell me this does something, I said nervously as I flipped the switch. The sounds of machinery powering on filled the room as a bright red light began flashing to my left. I stared at the miniature bulb as it flashed red in a steady, slow pattern. I watched as the machine whirred, the knobs and exhaust ports powering on as the device slowly powered on. I shined my flashlight at the large rusted gates in front of me, waiting for them to open. It's not... I was cut off by the sounds of gears crunching behind me, startling me as I almost dropped my flashlight. Shit, I said as I backed away from the machine. Smoke poured out of the control panel as the machine buzzed and whirred, seeming to be malfunctioning as I stumbled backwards. My flashlight pointed at the device as it appeared to collapse in on itself. The sounds of gears crunching pierced the air as the smoke covered the ceiling. It's gonna explode, I choked as I ran over to the metal bars. My flashlight waved around, shining its beam of light at the ground as I struggled to squeeze through the bars. It's going to explode, I cried, terror filling my voice as I squeezed through the bars, my skin painfully rubbing against the rusted metal as the sound of mechanical malfunctioning filled the chamber. I sucked in my stomach, my cheeks pressing against the bars as my body painfully rubbed against the gate. The sounds of the machine collapsing grew louder as I pushed off the ground, squeezing half of my body through the gate as the smell of smoke and burning wiring filled my nose. Tears stung my eyes as the overpowering stench of smoke and rusted metal filled my senses. Please, I don't want to die, not here, I cried frantically as I sucked in as much of my body as I could in an attempt to help me squeeze through the bars easier. My chest screamed as my skin rubbed against the rusted metal gate, my arm squeezing through the bars as I shoved myself onto the other side. I hit the ground with a sickening thud as my flashlight flew from my hands and shut off. The batteries exploding out of their compartment as my flashlight rolled into the darkness. The smell of smoke filled the area I had just gotten into as I scrambled to my feet. my skin burning with immense pain as I stumbled forwards. I have to get... The machine behind me exploded, a powerful wave of heat crashing in my back as I was sent flying forwards. The air was knocked from my lungs as everything went dark. Segment 2. What happened? I groaned painfully, struggling to get to my feet as I laid sprawled out on the concrete in the dark. My head pounded as my back stung with excruciating pain, the scratch marks in the previous level not responding well with the overpowering blast of heat that had burned into them just a few seconds ago. I touched my face tenderly, my fingertips becoming soaked in fresh blood as I touched my bleeding nose and busted lip. My eyes burned as I stared at the emptiness around me, dust and debris having filled my eyes and nose after the explosion. Fuck, I muttered as I slowly got to my feet, stumbling around as I struggled to stand up properly. Fresh blood slowly streamed down from my nose and lip, dripping onto the concrete as I staggered towards my flashlight. I limped through the darkness before falling to the ground, my knees scraping against the concrete as I hit the floor with a sickening and painful thud. My head spun as I reached for my flashlight, my fingers scraping the concrete as I smeared blood over the cold surface. I clawed at the ground, pulling my bruised and battered body forwards as I crawled towards my flashlight. I can't move, I groaned as wave after wave of intense pain crashed over me. My fingertips bled as I grabbed the flashlight, clawing at the ground as I gripped my only source of light in my right hand. My chest heaved as I laid on the ground, too weak to stand up or move anymore as I stared into the darkness. My combat knife dug into my leg as I moaned in pain. I need to get up, I said weakly as I stared at the dark abyss in front of me. The sea of shadows that surrounded me appeared to crush me down, pressing me to the floor as my wounds bled fresh blood. The taste of metal filled my mouth as I closed my lips, spitting blood onto the floor as I coughed painfully. My body shook with starvation and pain as I slowly crawled to a nearby wall. The air was warm, and I began to sweat as the humidity weakened me even more. I can't stay here, I said weakly as I stared into the shadows. My back propped up against the wall. Blood soaked my clothes as I stared into the darkness, my body being crushed down by the overpowering waves of pain that continued to fall over me. My vision faded in and out as my head grew more and more lightheaded. My thoughts faded out of view as the darkness surrounded me. The flashlight fell from my hands as my body went limp and everything went white. Segment 3. I woke up inside an empty hallway filled with copper pipes. Did I die? I cried as I looked around frantically. My head was heavy and my wounds had all healed up completely. I died, I choked as I slumped back against the wall. The uneven brick dug into my back as I stared down at the empty steampunk-style hallway that stretched on in front of me. Where's my stuff? I said nervously as I leapt to my feet. I felt around in my pockets to find nothing but the combat knife I had on me when I died. My flashlight, I said softly as I stared at the shadows that filled the area around me. The pipes groaned behind me as I pulled the combat knife out of my jeans pocket, holding it at the ready as I looked around. I turned around to face the hallway behind me, my eyes running along the uneven brick walls as I followed the metal pipes as they stretched into the distance. I don't remember what happened. Any of it, I muttered as I glanced down at the combat knife I held in my right hand. My mind was filled with thousands of questions as I tried to figure out where I was and what I was doing here. This looks like that one level with all the pipe walls, I said as I looked around. The ceiling was uneven and lined with dim, bowl-shaped lights that hung from a series of metal bars and rods that filled the support of the crumbling brick roof. Sorry, ran out of breath. This is my 5th video of the night. I glanced over at the pipes next to me, running my finger over the cold metal as I stared at the mysterious machinery that filled the hallway I woke up in. I lost some of my memory, I said as the realization that when I died, I lost my knowledge of this place hit me like a truck. I staggered back. bumping into the wall behind me as I stared at the row of pipes in front of me. I don't know what I did before, I said nervously as I looked around, my breathing growing uneven and rushed as I struggled to stay calm. This level is a new one, too. I don't know how to survive. I choked as I staggered to my right, gripping my combat knife tightly as I stumbled into the darkness. Sounds of creaking pipes and settling machinery surrounded me as I began to run, sprinting down the cramped brick hallway as I pushed myself as far as I could and to any hopes or ideas of escape. The sound of fast-moving air filled my ears as I ducked, barely avoiding a low-hanging exhaust port as burning steam exploded out of the exit valve, the boiling mist singeing the hairs on the back of my neck as I stumbled forwards. My feet fell over... Damn, I lost my place. My feet fell over each other as I ran into the wall, falling forwards before crashing to the ground. My elbows stung painfully as pain shot through my arms and up my neck. I winced, the waves of pain crashing into me over and over again as fresh scrapes and cuts surfaced on my arms and knees. I climbed to my feet, using the metal pipes lining the walls as support as I held my knife at the ready and continued to run. I need to get out of this hallway, I said sternly as I glanced behind me. The pipes groaned as another cloud of boiling steam exploded from the exhaust port just a few feet away from me. The hot mist burned my skin as it brushed against my shirt, making me cry out in pain. I need to leave this hallway, I cried as I stared straight ahead, my feet slapping the concrete floor as I ran as fast as I could in one direction. The hallway began to widen before abruptly ending, branching off to the right as the dead end blocked anyone hoping to go straight. A door. Is that a door? I said, exhausted from the running I just did as I gasped for air. My lungs burned as I grabbed the door handle and pushed through, entering a new area. The air was freezing cold and felt heavy and claustrophobic. A new area? I mumbled as goosebumps spread along my forearms and biceps. It's so cold, I said, shivering as I held my combat knife in my right hand. But it's something, I said as I began to walk across the empty room. The walls of the area were made up of cracked gray brick and the floor consisted of a sheet of cold concrete. Thin, gray concrete pillars occasionally sprouted up from the floors that connected the ground and the ceiling. A row of dim, pale white lights lined the ceiling as a massive black rod supported the roof. The air was cold and heavy, and a thin fog filled the area. Faded gray pipes lined the walls and stretched from the floor to the ceiling as generators littered the corners. This place seems neat, I muttered as I looked around while I walked. The sounds of my shoes on the cold concrete echoed down the chamber as I scanned the walls and floor for resources or hints of escape. It's got nothing in it, though, I muttered as I glanced behind me. The only visible door was the metal gate I had entered the sector in, the rusted metal bars having closed back over the hallway as they locked behind me. I turned to face what was ahead again and froze in my tracks. One of the scratcher entities from the level I barely escaped from was aimlessly wandering around a couple of feet away. Shit, not again, I muttered as I darted behind a thick concrete pillar. The scratcher seemed to detect my movement as it dragged its claws on the concrete, slowly wandering over towards me to investigate. What do I glanced at the combat knife in my hands and hesitated, not knowing if it would actually work. It's worth a try, I said to myself as I peered around the pillar, getting a quick look at the creature before darting back behind the safety of the pillar. It's really dangerous, though, I said as feelings of dread and anxiety began to wrap around me, crushing any hopes I had left. Now or never, I muttered as I jumped out from behind the pillar. I held the knife in an attack stance as I stared at the creature, watching as it instantly locked its targeted attacks on me. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, I said as I ducked, the creature's claws flying over my head as they obliterated the concrete pillar beside me. Debris and metal shrapnel exploded outwards, chunks of concrete covering the floor as I leapt back. The scratcher's attacks just barely missed, its claws just barely missing my stomach as I hit the ground hard. The air was knocked out of me as my tailbone grew sore from the impact of the fall. That wasn't a good idea, I said as I scrambled to my feet. The scratcher took its claws deep into the concrete, sharpening them again for another round of attacks. Move! I cried as I jumped to the left, just barely dodging a sudden attack as I rolled on the concrete, my combat knife almost flying from my hands as I hit the ground hard. I scrambled to my feet, my hips and arms already bruising as I began to run. The scratcher growled, sending chills to my body as I sprinted past the terrifying black creature. The scratcher's claws whistled as they flew past my ear, almost clipping my shoulder as I ducked, avoiding another attack. Definitely not a good idea, I cried as my feet slid on the concrete, my shoes almost losing traction as I darted right. The scratcher's claws dug deep into the concrete as it sharpened its claws once more, continuing to pursue its prey as it readied for another fatal blow. I pumped my legs as I struggled to avoid the bringer of death that was hot on my heels, darting just around concrete pillars as I tried to make my way to the end of the hall. "Just find an exit!" I cried as I leapt to the right, catching air as the Scratcher's claws shattered the concrete, cracked spiderwebbing outwards as I obliterated the chunk of the floor. "Preferably now!" I cried as I screamed as I landed on the ground running. Shit, I keep hearing shit behind me, dude. What the fuck? I screamed as I landed on the ground running, things seeming to move in slow motion as I grasped for air. The sounds of the Scratcher's claws scraping on the concrete pierced my ears as I spotted the door. Sorry I'm reading so fast, by the way. It's just so fast-paced, so I kind of speed up. Sorry. "Just make it to the door," I said sternly as I listened to the creature behind me. The sounds of movement had almost completely vanished as I began to turn around, not looking to see where I was going as I slammed into a concrete pillar. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the ground. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the concrete hard. At least I didn't mess up until 16 minutes. Usually it's like 2. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the hard concrete beam with my entire left side, my body bouncing off as I crashed to the ground. I rolled on the floor before coming to a stop against the door. My lungs and head... Fucking hell, dude. My head spun as my lungs screamed for air. Shit, I said weakly as I watched the Scratcher quickly approach my location. I held the combat knife tightly in my hand as I fumbled for the doorknob, pulling myself up using the metal pipes around the door as I scrambled to my feet. Shit, I said repeatedly as I fumbled with the lock, struggling to push the door open as the creature quickly approached, claws at the ready for the final blow. "Fucking open!" I screamed at the top of my lungs as I yanked open the door. Sorry, it's like 10 o'clock at night, I can't scream. I yanked open the door, the lock breaking off as I threw the door open and darted inside. The door shutting behind me as the monster crashed into the solid wall with pure anger and bloodthirsty rage, the sound of everything around me fading as it all went black. Get ready for the abandoned office soon, boys. Coming out on July 9th. You ain't ready for it.